Action!
Thank you very much. That is Sean Michael Gloria behind camera, who sat with me today on episode 15. We had a good chat about so many things, much more than him as an actor, a director, a producer, a writer. He does it all. We went deep, guys, and if you're ready for that, so am I. Check it out and let me know what you think. Sean Michael Gloria, welcome to today's podcast.
Thank you. Love what you've done with the place, man.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Happy to have you here. You, I believe, are episode 15.
15. I'll remember that forever.
15 in the can. We'll do tattoos after we wrap out of here. Silence your cell phone if it already.
Thank you, thank you.
And then equally, since you're a man in the know, if you don't see a red light on your camera, give me a holler and I'll restart it for you.
My attention to detail is horrid, but I'll do my best.
Well, happy to have you here and excited for what we're going to talk about. What are we going to talk about?
I don't know, all kinds of things. You were, it was kind of intimidating at first. I'm like, ooh, I asked you that question and you're like, I just want to talk about you. I'm like, oh, so let me put in some thought into this.
Well, that's been the kind of experience thus far is, obviously I am who I am and I operate in the worlds I do. And so assuming I'm developing an audience of like-minded individuals, I like to think that the people I seek out to have conversation will fall in that array of things, skill sets, networks, whatever, and it should be interesting. And equally, by finding individuals like yourself, we'll have an interesting conversation that should be ever so enlightening and entertaining to a degree.
Perfect.
So
you were very eloquent, sir.
I'll do a little. So we can start just with an introduction of who you are, your background here, and what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm Sean Michael Gloria. I stand 6 foot. I'm not 6 foot. I'm 5'11". But in our industry, I'm 6 foot. We're currently in Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm an actor, writer. I produce every once in a while when people will have me, or if I have something that I want to commit the next 2 to 3 years of my life to. So I do those things. I'm a screenwriter by trade, bit of a filmmaker as well. I direct every once in a while. I'm just kind of in the industry, man. So I do a little bit of everything, and I keep myself busy because if I'm not busy, then I start to, the existential crisis kicks in.
Yeah, get busy living or get busy dying, they say, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've tried one of those, didn't like it very much. I'm sure that'll come up later, I'm sure. But I like where I'm at now, and I like what I'm doing, and I like talking about it. So I guess I'll start with acting because that was kind of like the first thing.
Well, and equally, that was how our introduction to each other
Yes.
was a project. Somebody saw you had a casting or something, and you were just looking. So that was our introduction, that you needed a moto guy, happened to be one.
Yeah.
And then once we got to know each other, our experience in Atlanta is similar in the sense that coming here for all things industry that it is, we kind of saw eye to eye on the many other ways we could create together, not just specific to that one project that brought us together.
Right. Which I don't even think panned out. It was kind of, a friend was making something and they're like, hey, do you know anyone that rides motorcycles? And our mutual friend, I think I put it on Instagram, he sent it to you. And then we started talking, and
Justin Burns? Ever Ready Muay Thai.
How are you, Justin?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And then you tried to buy me a bubbly water and your card declined.
Oldest trick in the book.
Oldest trick.
Oh, I'm sorry. This never happened.
So I took care of it. No, it's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So I'm just kind of clued in on different groups. If they need things, I try to help where I can. I don't always have to be attached as a producer. I just love filmmaking and bringing people together and collaborating. And so that was kind of a cool little random thing that has led to this. And I'm glad it did, man, because I enjoy your company and what you're doing.
Well, we've had the fortune of hanging out over the time in between. But would you say, for our viewers at home, listeners, are you more so an actor? Where do you spend most of your time these days? What is your main pursuit? Obviously, we're wearing many hats, which you can buy online. But specific to the industry as it fits now, what are you doing specifically?
All of them. It depends, I guess, on kind of what's right in front of me. So right now, I'm in contract through June on a feature film project with a company, which is pretty cool. It's one of the the bigger projects to come along that I'm involved with, and I really enjoy the story on that. So that's kind of my base. I'm also working as a content producer for a catering company that helps keep the lights on,
Yep.
and then the strike is over, man. So I'm back to auditioning, and we're getting back to work on that. So I want to say that writing is probably the thing that I'm most engaged in all the time.
Yeah.
My head is always in the acting game. I'm always studying, watching movies, reading books, taking a class, seminar here and there. But the thing that kind of gets me out of bed the most is probably writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's you coming up with stories, that's you like referencing lived experience. Like, what's your go-to storyline that you jump into? What brings you out of bed?
Oh man. So a lot of it, because I kind of do it for work, a lot of it tends to be for clients, or chosen individuals who come to me with a story who need a writer. And then I start kind of helping them form the story, and I'll end up writing the script, and then sometimes I'll stay on as a producer and help them pull it together. Other times they take it and run with it, So what probably gets me out of bed, well, what used to get me out of bed a lot was like my obligations to others, right?
Yeah.
Which maybe we'll build into that direction. But now, over the last couple of years, I've really developed some self-accountability, my self-discipline game has like skyrocketed. So now I'm up every morning without fail, except for, my one day during the week that I allow myself some time to sleep in. I'm up at 5 a.m. every morning, and I start my day with writing. So I'm a big like journaler, and it gives me balance. And then typically I do what I got to do, and then
your
it moves
journaling
into
process, is this just you like, thoughts of the day, what you've been ruminating on, like what is generally like for a non-journaler?
yeah. So I kind of let it dictate itself in a way. So I get up in the morning, and the intent is to take all these things that are kind of floating around in here and put them on the page, and that way it kind of gives me an outside perspective, and I can kind of see which parts of my life need some attention. You know what I mean?
A little attunement.
Yeah, because a lot of my life I spent out of balance, and when I'm out of balance and I'm purely reacting from instinct, I'm making emotional decisions and I'm knocking things out of balance, and then I'm ignoring certain things over here, and that kind of neglect lets things run wild, and then I'm just trying to hold on. You know what I mean? So journaling for me has really become an anchor in my life, to where I can sit down, I can put it all on the page, and I don't necessarily restrict it. If I want to start writing about what it is that I plan on eating that day, I let it happen, and then it falls into that nutritional category of my life, and then I'm having thoughts about that. So it's more so about exploring the kind of subconscious mind and the things that are floating, so that way I can come back to balance, whether it's relationships or my relationship. I'm monogamous, one. So that relationship, my physical fitness, my nutrition, my spirituality, my mental and emotional state, which in my opinion kind of form into that spirituality. These are all things that need attention to detail, and that's something I've really been working on, because I spent a lot of time as an escapist.
Yeah.
I was always looking for the thing that was going to get me away. And now I'm kind of looking for the thing that's going to keep me present.
Yeah.
It's a different style of living that I enjoy.
It's interesting, as you say that. That's not far off from my experience, albeit I get there a different way.
Sure.
Because identifying those pieces in me that the distractions, the shiny thing, I'm a bit of a man of excess. It's like, why one when 16 is better? You know what I mean?
You're talking to another man of excess.
And so that can
I
come
understand.
up in any number of ways, which could be bright and colorful and fun, and certainly still parts of my personality. But finding those grounding elements to keep me present in whatever that is, if you're journaling to make sense and put in order the thoughts of the day, I equally sit in silence to know my brain's going to talk. regardless. And it's going to say the wrong thing, and it's going to say the right thing, and it's going to tell me 7 different ways to get to both of those things.
Yeah.
And so if I don't tell it to shut up and focus on whatever that thing, if it's the tool being journaling or equally fitness and the choices I choose in that, it's so valuable to let you kind of come out of the chaos and go, what actually fucking matters?
Yeah.
And then you can give it the attention it deserves.
Yeah. I love that you use the word tool, because that's what all of this stuff is, man. And it's
if you're not using the tool, you are the tool.
You are the tool.
And nobody wants to be a tool.
And everybody knows it, man. Everybody knows you're that tool too, and you think they don't, but they fucking do. And once you realize that, you're like, oh shit, I need to get my shit together.
Yeah.
You know, and then you can develop the tools.
Self-awareness is powerful medicine.
Dude, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But yeah, tools, super important. Fitness as a tool, journaling as a tool, you know, so developing those things, learning what works for you is really important. And for me, writing is a huge tool. It happens to be something that I'm really passionate about as well. So I've got like half a book written, just sitting in a Google Drive, you know what I mean, that like I will return to eventually, but right now it's like screenwriting is paying the bills. It feeds that artistic hunger. And then journaling in the morning it also feeds me in a very, not selfish isn't the right word, but it's,
I think that selfish gets a bad rep, because I understand what you say, where if I don't show up for myself first, I'm going to be showing up much less for everybody else that needs me anywhere else.
I'm glad you mentioned that,
because
I have an issue with selfish having a bad rap, because at the end of the day, we all need to be a certain amount of selfish before we can show up for anyone else. If I don't take care of myself, I'm of no use to anyone in my life.
Yeah. The big thing that's always easy for people to understand in that framing is to say, like, as a lifeguard, when they teach you, I was a lifeguard at Sunsplash for many moons as a younger man, that when you learn, they go, whoever's drowning, if you go in and, you go in, they'll grab onto you, you're going down with them. And so the first thing you got to do is make sure you're good, separate yourself, and then you can help them, because otherwise you're both going down. So that's a very dumbed down version of just being mindful of boundaries and taking care of yourself to then be available for others when they need it.
And that is so true, because I've noticed, even more so now, I've got a lot more clarity in my life. I guess I'll just be out with it. I'm, a year and a half sober.
What?
Right? Yeah. And it was a huge thing that I needed to do, like, for myself. You know what I mean? And it's giving me a lot of clarity. And now I can see those things when someone's kind of flailing. It's easier for me to recognize that and then develop a way to respond to it that allows me to help them if they need it without putting myself in danger. Because otherwise, if you're reacting to things, to kind of touch on what I had said a while ago, instincts, if you're reacting to things, you're becoming kind of a liability to yourself and other people. And so if you make sure you're good first and you can respond, I feel like it comes out better for you,
Absolutely. Well, then, and to touch on it, and then we can loop back to it. So a year and a half, kudos to you.
Thank you.
This is a night and day difference that you're experiencing. This is the first time going sober. Like, what has been your relationship with alcohol?
Yeah, I have tried to get sober a number of times on my own for a long time. It was, I could stop whenever I want, So it was, I thought I was in control of this thing that was just beating me into the fucking ground any chance that it had. You know what I mean? Like, my life, there's so much of my life that, thinking about it kind of makes me a little sad, but then I don't really hold on to it. But so much of that, like, I was a professional blackout artist. Like, I don't even remember a lot of the things that happened. I just knew that, like the type of drunk I was not like a violent or scary drunk or anything like that. I just loved to have a good time. I was just very, like, hedonistic kind of, let's have some fun. And, I was everybody's best friend when I was drinking. But then I'd wake up and not remember how I got home or where we ended up, or I'm like missing a shoe, or, it was just, there was too much of that.
You were an escape artist from yourself. You're like,
yeah, I was trying to escape myself, and it was by pouring myself into other people, and like I'd end up in like strangers' houses, for like some after party, and I'm like, where the fuck am I?
Yeah.
And I'm like 10 miles from my house because I jumped in someone's truck bed as they were pulling off, and I'm like, how the hell do I get home from here? I'm losing my phone. Dude, I've spent days having to revisit and figure out which bar I was at, like finding matchbooks in my pocket. I'm like, I must have been there, and then I'll find my stuff there. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not cool. It's not a good look. I'm being the tool, But so that was a lot of what my life was from like, I probably started like hitting it hard at like 16, 17. My first drink was stupid early. I was like 12, I was like stealing beers out of my parents' fridge and stuff because I was curious. My parents were kind of drinkers, partiers. They like having people over. And it got normalized for me like way early. And
was heavy drinking normalized or just drinking normalized?
so my dad, and I'm not throwing shade at anybody. I love my parents, you know what I mean? Like my dad wasn't really a heavy drinker or anything. He liked to have people over. Every once in a while, I'd be on the dance floor at some, local pub with him, and I'm like, he's got the jukebox going, and I'm like entertaining people as they're drinking, you know what I mean? But it was just it was normalized in that sense. I think heavy drinking was kind of hidden from me, I think, if it was happening, Heavy drinking was something that I kind of, I didn't realize exactly that it was a problem, but it was just, my idea of drinking was always, you drink to get destroyed. You drink to just get absolutely wasted.
When, if I recall, you have some Florida time?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was, that's kind of where it really set in, I guess, so I grew up in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I drank in high school. I was, finding booze where I could, and I was drinking here and there, and I was getting drunk, and I was even blacking out at that age, you know what I mean? But it wasn't like, I didn't have access to it, and I wasn't old enough to buy it on my own, so I didn't really recognize it as a problem. When I turned 19, I moved to Florida, started going to school out there, and I was like studying business. I was kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, I was trying to figure shit out, and so my life, the fun parts of my life were really just waiting for the weekend. I was a weekend warrior, and then, I was in an environment with older people who had access to things. I'll put it that way. And unfortunately, I found myself, living in an environment where that was like the thing to do. They were like weekend warriors as well. And this is where I started to realize like how it started to creep in from the weekend into the week to 5 o'clock every day. And all of a sudden it was just like, it was a thing. That's just what people do. And there were so many people doing it around me that I was like, oh,
yeah,
this is just what being an adult is. Cool. So I'm like going to school and working full time, hitting it pretty hard on the weekends and stuff, sometimes during the week. And then I discover acting, because I found myself kind of miserable sitting at this job and was like hungover all the time. And I'm like, there's got to be more to life than this, And so I had this, I remembered this moment when I was a kid. I had seen a movie trailer for like Mission Impossible, and like Tom Cruise is like doing all this cool shit. He's jumping off things. He's coming down on the wire, and I'm like, what the fuck is that? I'm like, I want to do that. That looks cool. That looks fun. My grandfather was like, that's not for normal people. That's not. You're gonna get a job. You're gonna start a business. That's not a thing that.
Very practical.
We do. And bless his heart, I mean, he's trying to protect me, right?
Right.
Like my grandfather, I was raised primarily by my grandparents, but it was like just stay the path kind of thing, which I got to Florida. Yeah, you're good here. I got to Florida and remembered that memory, thought of an acting, looked up an acting class, found one like within walking distance of my house. So I signed up, and then like 2 months after I joined this acting class, because I became so obsessive about it, my performance at work started to drop. Then they fired me, right? Well, so now I'm unemployed. It was the best day of my life because I was like, I have this new thing that I can just obsess over.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I just started getting on every film set possible, meeting people in acting classes, started kind of, gaining some materials. And then I decided I'm going to California.
As you do.
I got a couple of applause after dropping a monologue in class and having like a scene showcase where people would come and there was people talking to me after class and like, oh, that was a really good thing you did or whatever. And I'm like, I got it. I'm going to California.
I am Tom Cruise on the way.
I am the next Tom Cruise. Yeah, so I ended up buying a passport, Honda passport.
Oh, okay. I was about to say you don't need a passport to go to California.
No, not that kind of passport.
Yeah.
Well, so my family was like, they found out that I had gotten fired, and then they found out also that I had stopped going to school. And so at the time they were like, look, you can't live here if you're not going to school and you're not working.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, bet. So took what money I had. Went back to Colorado, kind of regrouped for a second, bought a car, and then I drove out to California, and I lived in that car. And I just did kind of the typical thing that you hear a lot of artists and aspiring actors doing is they go out there and they rough and tough it and they try to make their way. And I did all that stuff. And this is in like 2012 ish.
Similar timeline. I went 2010.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Trying to think. Yeah, I think it was, not 2012.
How old are you?
Right now?
Yeah.
I just turned 35.
35. What year did you graduate high school?
2007.
Okay, so I was 2006. But then to graduate college, the film program I went to had me out 2010.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, LA, that's what you do.
Right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't advise it if you're young, have no money, and you are harboring a nightmarish addiction issues.
Yeah, or they just put fuel on the fire for you.
Well, right, because what's the first thing that you do when you get out there? You look for a job. What's one of the easiest jobs to get? You go into a restaurant. You ask if you can wash some fucking dishes or bus some tables. You know what I mean? And so that's what I did. I ended up getting a job and bussing tables, and then all of a sudden I worked my way into becoming a bartender, so I could start making some serious money. And I climbed that ladder pretty quick, and now I'm slinging drinks. And the place that I was working, they wanted me to bond with the clientele, so they're like, have some drinks. If someone wants to buy you a shot, whatever. Yeah. Well, then that just compounded, and I was just shit-faced every day, you know what I mean? Because I had no moderation. And again, I thought this is just what people do because the environment that I was in and kind of what I was taught when I was in Florida was this is just what people do. This is normal, So I never thought twice about it. And I didn't really have like a reason to stop, I guess. Yeah. But then that compounded into like, now I'm hanging around with people who just kind of spend all their time in bars, and I'm less focused on the acting stuff, more focused on just being liked by these people who didn't really like have a whole lot going. They didn't really care to achieve things. They just wanted to get fucked up all the time. So I fell into that circle, and then started graduating from alcohol and like weed. I wasn't even really like a big weed smoker. Alcohol was my gateway drug into other things. Had a couple drinks, and then all of a sudden I was cool with anything because it felt good to escape. Yeah. I was upset and irritated that I wasn't pursuing the acting thing, or I wasn't getting that agent. Drink. I didn't get selected for this audition. Drink. So it's just finding reasons to be mad at the world instead of taking any kind of responsibility. Yeah. I would just drink it away. That's how I learned how to cope, because I didn't have someone in my life. I did when I was with my grandfather, but I didn't because he was dad figure. Yeah. And I'm, kind of a non-conforming rebel at heart. So it was kind of like, I'm not listening to you. You don't know my life. You know. And so then I end up in California on my own. And all I really know is what I learned from some of the older influences in my life, and that was how to party and have a good time, because that's what life is about.
Interesting, as you say that, I think similarities between what it would be to come up in Florida, migrate over to Los Angeles, and just being a bartender and all things. Like the idea of falling into the pattern of like drinking, when I think a lot of addiction is because you like how you feel more when you're drunk than your sober self. Yeah. And that's because of any number of reasons, that it's the job that your life, whatever it is. People in Florida generally, and this isn't I'm not shitting on Florida. I love Florida. I'll go back there all day. It's a lot of retired folks. They already went and did their things. The things that they aspire to and motivate themselves with, they already went and did. So Florida became a ipso facto, Jimmy Buffett land, where it's like they're all chilling.
Yeah.
And so if you're
That
younger,
vibe is so strong too.
and if you're younger, you can fall into that pattern, hanging out with people that like they're not motivated. They already did the thing, and so now if I'm acting like them, like with bypassing the whole life portion of things, that's a slippery slope. So much so to fast forward to California, to be hanging out with people that could be a trick too. That like sometimes would get me. You'd meet a famous person. You'd be with some type of celebrity scenario or a person that could change your world.
Yeah.
In a social dynamic that's just drinking, where like, they're full send, we're like, I'm full send too. What are we going to get into? In an almost lie to myself way that like, if I'm socially available in this situation, it'll pay off in this other thing,
Yep. 1000%.
And so that could be a similar where it's like, oh, I'm not there yet. I'm not like, why am I permitting myself to act in such a way when clearly I haven't done the work to deserve any of this relief?
Because there's that validation in feeling accepted and
The
like
chemical
and
validations
approved
that-
of, and chemical validations as well. So I mean, you're hanging out with this group, and if that person who kind of like, if you do a quick power analysis, that celebrity that's in the group kind of maintains a certain kind of power over this group, and so if that person says, "Hey, we're drinking," everyone else kind of tends to fall in line, and so that's what we're doing now. We're drinking, So that kind of influence. It doesn't necessarily just have to be celebrities, but kind of anyone in your life. Think about who your influences are. Think about like if you look up to somebody, whether they are aware of it or not, have a power over you, and their influence means something.
Absolutely.
Typically, we want validation from that person. So if that person says, "Oh, we're going to go out for a couple drinks," I like to drink. I want to do that. I want to drink with you, and then you want to be that person's person. And then all of a sudden, you've taken on all their bad habits, and now they're your bad habits.
What's the saying? It's like, show me your 5 closest friends. That is your personality, everything. And so by aligning yourself with individuals that are, whether they're just partiers, that'll be you. If they're assholes, that'll be you. If they're fit as fuck and millionaires, that'll be you. And so being mindful of those things and along the way, and obviously these are lessons we learn throughout life, but it's so true. Yeah.
Well, and I've always been, not so much now because I'm developing in a different way, but I was always very easily influenced because I was so concerned with being liked. And now you got me like, when you check, I check.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah. I was so concerned with being liked, man. And we don't have to get, too deep into this. And I'll premise this with saying that I absolutely love my mother, and she's a wonderful person, and we are good. And she was doing the best that she could at the time. But she's the person that decided I needed to be raised by my grandparents because she had things that she was going through that she was dealing with. And she'd gotten pregnant with my little sister, and it was the financial burden was a bit too much. So her, solution for that was asking for assistance from my grandparents. I don't fault her with doing that at all anymore. But for a long time, I held a resentment for that. I was upset about it. That was the thing that was kind of driving me, was this anger of abandonment and like feeling isolated and just less than.
Yeah.
And so what that did is it turned into like this fucking undying need of validation and codependency on everybody that was in my life. When the answer really was letting go of all that and learning how to love myself, right? But that wouldn't come until so much later. So that whole time I was in California was just, years and years of trying to find the crowd that I fit in, that I felt the most valid with. And unfortunately, misery loves company. And when you fail to realize that someone is miserable because they are showering you with grace, you tend to fall into that trap of this person is one of the kindest people I've ever met, or they're doing so much for me. Oh my God, like, why are they so nice? And it's because they're miserable and they're looking for that validation as well. And they have something that they can offer people. It could be drugs, could be alcohol, whatever the case may be.
Everybody loves an enabler.
Exactly. Especially if they're like giving it to you for free.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was a broke actor. I was making money bartending, but spending it all on drugs and alcohol and stuff. And so now it's like you kind of attach yourself to these people who are willing to give it to you, and then your problem just compounds even more. you know? And it's just a bunch of sad people hoping to be liked by each other, and that's a sad deal, man, you know? And it's a slippery slope, and it just gets worse. And so I had the wherewithal, I started doing some deep shit, man. Like I was getting into some bad shit. And I had the wherewithal to step away for a second and go, wait a second, wait a minute. This isn't why I'm out here. And I could hear my grandpa, my grandfather's voice kind of in my head, like the lessons and the things that you kind of drill into me. I would hear that from time to time. And so eventually, so I'll share a quick story. I ended up getting invited to this party.
Stand by on that. Getting invited to the party.
Yeah.
The battery's dead.
Oh no.
So the specific misfortune when the battery's dead, I jumped that microphone. That's my line running. It's just funny. I should be just running until the back channel. So
Yeah. I like getting into the truth, man. Like the honesty, the nitty gritty of things.
Beating again, and I fucked up the focus. So you found yourself invited to.
Yeah. So I was working out in LA. I get invited to this party. It was for this, for this big time director that had a hit. It was their like second, their like debut feature, if it was a debut. It was a really big movie, and it was their follow-up movie to that. And it was this industry kind of party going on, and I get invited because I worked with one of the assistants on the movie or whatever at our day gig, and didn't know anyone there. And I show up at this party, and I'm having a good time, but I'm really hitting it hard.
Yeah.
Fast forward, end up in an argument with some dude bro over something, right? And we like start getting into it, like it's about to be a fight. Well, because people there knew him, no one there knew me, I'm the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, get the fuck out. I'm like, all right, fine, I'm out. And I start leaving, and oh man, how many details do I give of this? I end up, fuck it. I get mad as hell that I'm getting kicked out of this party, right? So like, as I'm leaving, I know, I'm like, I gotta pee, and I can't ask to go back in the house to pee. Yeah. They've already kicked me out. So I go around the side of the house, and I'm like peeing in a bush,
Yeah.
And I just get hit with this spotlight. And I'm like, that's a very bright flashlight. And then I hear the intercom. Come out from behind the bush, hands where we can see them. I'm like, fuck. I'm about to catch a charge for being exposed. It's just a bad look. Fix myself, come out. Like, get over here.
In LA, with your dick out, now you're like, am I allowed to reach into my pants, or they're gonna like, who knows what they're gonna think's happening next?
Right.
Things to consider.
Things to consider, dude. And so I'm backing out. All of a sudden, I feel someone grab the back of my fucking shirt, throw it on the ground, arms ripped behind my fucking back. I got a knee in my neck. I'm being handcuffed. I'm like, fuck. Like, it's over.
Yeah.
It's over for me, I'm like, I'm in the mud too, and like LAPD. Look, I don't know any of y'all personally, but y'all a little aggressive, just a little bit. I understand it's not a good look, but I was like, damn, like I'm getting the works right now, and so they're kind of talking shit to me, and they're like, what are you doing out here? And I tell them, it's just there's a party going on, and they're like, party? I'm like, yeah, there's a party in this house. I was leaving the party. They had, as soon as the cops had rolled up, or they got tipped off or something, all the lights went off, everyone shut up. There was like 250 fucking people in this house. It was insane. Everyone's dead quiet. I'm like, there's a party. They go and knock on the door. He says there's a party here. Is there a party? The dude's like, what? What?
Oh man, and you're in cuffs next to the car, like.
Yeah, I'm covered in mud, looking up at the door, like, you motherfucker, right? And the dude's looking at me, he's like, I've never seen him before. I'm like, okay. So they close the door. LAPD, stands me up, and I don't remember exactly what they were saying, but I don't know who's looking out for me. Call comes through on the radio, and they all just energy shifts. There was like 4 of them, I think. 3 of them take off. And the last dude is taking the cuffs off me. He goes, "It's your lucky night." Bounced. And they took off, hit the sirens, gone. So I'm standing in front of this house, covered in mud, just had my dick in my hand. The police were roughing me up. And I knock on this door.
Oh, you're not done yet. Okay.
I knock on this door. And the same dude.
Yeah, you went back to the same house?
This dude answers. He's just staring at me. And I'm staring at him. And I'm like, I got to drive. And I have a cup of water. And the dude slams the door, and I'm just standing there. And he comes back and he hands me a cup of water.
Okay.
And closes the door.
Okay.
And so I'm like, I'll take that. We're good. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I drink it and I leave, and I never saw that person who invited me to the party at work again. At least I don't remember. But that was probably my first major, like, hitting, like, kind of rock bottom. You know what I mean? Because my brain was all messed up from, like, drugs and alcohol and just being lost. End up at that party. That was massively embarrassing for me. And it actually spawned the idea that I needed to leave California. So I ended up, calling my grandfather, saying, I think I need to come home with my tail between my legs and kind of regroup.
What year is this?
Figure out, I think this was 2015,
okay,
16-ish. And he was, without saying I told you so, he's kind of like, all right, come on back. We'll figure out what you're going to do next. What I ended up doing next was trying to give up acting. Couldn't stop thinking about it. It was just nagging at me. I got a job at a gym. I was selling gym memberships, and I couldn't stop thinking about acting. And so I ended up, and I'll fast forward a little bit, but I ended up going back to Florida, getting back into the kind of indie scene, and with intent, developing my demo reel and stuff like that, with the idea that I was going to end up moving to a bigger market. I just didn't really know where. But then, going back to Florida, it was like there was groups out there that I didn't really need to be hanging around, that I fell back into as well.
Did you have any preconceived notion that I should avoid those people, or did you not think twice about it? Be like, I'll call Jerry when I get in town.
I still didn't think that I had like a problem.
Yeah.
I always blamed, everyone else. It was always kind of like, oh, that environment or those people, but it wasn't, those environments everywhere. It was like this particular bar. I don't need to go there and see those people. I can go to this bar instead.
Yeah.
So I ended up not doing. I still didn't realize that I needed to do the work, and so I successfully built my demo reel. I built my name in this kind of smaller market, and there's some really, really passionate and brilliant filmmakers in Florida. That I keep in touch with to this day, that it's just like, they're like extended family to me. And I love working with them and collaborating. So I built my demo reel with the help of these amazing filmmakers, and I ended up coming to Atlanta. And I had gone to a couple AA meetings in Florida, but it was more so because I was working at a bar, again, like, it's just,
Yeah.
I was working security at a bar. It was like a bougie whiskey club. And I was working with a bartender there who ended up leaving, getting into AA. I ran into her kind of randomly. And she looked amazing, right? She was like super fit. All of a sudden, she just had this glow to her. And I'm like, what happened? Like, where'd you go? What's the secret? She's like, I got sober. And I was like, really? I was like, maybe that's something I should consider, right? And then I realized that, she invited me, and I started going, and then I realized the reason why I was going was because I was interested in her, not because I was interested in getting sober. And so this is where now, in hindsight, I'm starting to realize that, like, there was a lot more that I needed to deal with. It wasn't necessarily, as you'll hear in the rooms now, is that like, I didn't have a drinking problem, I had a thinking problem. And that thinking always drove me to drink. And so the way that I was thinking was that, oh, I'm gonna go to this AA meeting and entertain this so I can win the validation, of this beautiful woman. And so I went, and when I realized that she wasn't interested in me, I stopped going, and so lo and behold, the problems persist. So then I end up packing a backpack, had a conversation with a friend who had moved to Atlanta, and he offered me like his couch, right? He's like, if you want to come up here. And I again found myself in this vicious cycle of substance abuse in Florida, and I'm looking for an escape. That was always my
Did you find a bartending job when you got up here?
I did get a job as a host in a restaurant, and it lasted like 3 days because I was making like $35 a shift, and I was like, this is insane.
Yeah.
It's not gonna work. So I came up and ended up staying on my buddy's couch, and then it was just like trying to find work. I was working as like a brand ambassador for like random companies, and I was ended up on a bus and going to different cities and stuff. And so my tendency to run, because I was a runner, I would just run from all my problems. Ruin my reputation in California, I'll just run to another, I'll go back to Colorado. Ruin my reputation, I'll run to Florida, I'll run somewhere else. And so now it's like my job takes me to different cities because I'm working as a brand ambassador, and my thing to explore the city was just bar crawling around the city. That's how I got to know the city, and talking to locals, talking to bartenders. And the cycle just continues, you know what I mean? And so you wake up after blacking out a number of times, and then you just forget about it because you just stop talking to those people or whatever. And in Atlanta, I was just couch surfing, so I didn't really have any responsibility, had no one to be accountable to, none of that. And I ended up getting a manager out here after showing her my demo reel. This was like pretty early on too, and I was still just a mess. But she saw something in me, believed in me, took me on as a client. That gave me some hope. Then I got serious about screenwriting because I was like, man, I'm not booking anything. Write your own roles. So then I start studying screenwriting, start taking seminars, intensives, whatever. I get pretty serious about it. Now all of a sudden I'm kind of making my own money. I don't have to travel or go anywhere. I can work from home. So this is a bit of a shining light. Cool. Well, now instead of going out, because now I've got a little bit of responsibility, right? Instead of going out, now I'm just buying cheap booze and bringing it home, and now I'm drinking while I'm writing all day. And I was like very functional. I know, right? Like, dude, and when I looked up to those guys, like Hunter S. Thompson and Hemingway, Charles Bukowski, it was like I was always just like.
In LA, I lived 2 streets over from his childhood home.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
If we end up back on some trip, I'll take you by his spot.
Yeah. That's awesome, dude. I love those kind of rough and tough writers, especially like the Beat generation. Like those guys were huge influences. On the Road was like a huge influence for me because I was living that life. I was going city to city, finding, little dive bars where they were playing some music, and then just getting like shithoused.
Do you, to interrupt your wonderful flow, you ever Jack Kerouac?
Yeah.
Man, if that isn't just a fever dream, like how he writes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Dude.
Fever
Fever dream's a great way to describe it.
I can't read it when I go to bed because then I'll be like up all night because it's just so like just his cadence. It's just so funny.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and it it really makes your mind wander, and you kind of.
Well,
it's very fantastical.
The way that we're already wired, being men of excess, writers like that take us where we want to go. Literarily.
We both came to that, so that's what it is.
Yeah. Where to read it is to be at that party, to feel the excess. They do the thing that I would do, and I go, oh yeah, I got that. I'd do that too.
Yep.
And so you take the ride with them, so it's such a fun experience in that sense.
Yeah. Well, and I love those guys, and I feel like I'm getting a point in this where it's getting repetitive, and that's how I started to feel with drinking. You know what I mean? So everything kind of changed when I was deciding where to go next. Still didn't realize I had a problem. Then I met my who would become my now fiance, and it was out at a bar
Yep.
where I was getting shit-faced. And I sat down next to her, and at the time I had a septum piercing. And I know she had one, but mine was like flipped up. And so I'm like, oh, this girl's really cute. I want to sit next to her and just start a conversation. Sit down next to her, and I'm like, I like your septum. Pop mine out. And she's like, oh, cool. You know, she was kind of like playing it cool, whatever. Then we, you know, started hanging out and couldn't stop thinking about her. And then I had someone in my life that I was like accountable for, who, you know, my actions had an effect on. And so it took a number of she is the most patient and understanding person I've ever met in my life. And it took a number of rock bottoms to wake up. And she understood that and this isn't me pushing any kind of accountability, but she understood that that addiction in itself is it's a mental disease. And unless we are aware of that and willing to do the work, you're not really gonna get better from it. You know what I mean? And she had hope that I was gonna wake up and do the work. And so I had heard a number in my times in my life, like, I think you should slow down on the drinking. I think you probably drink too much. You know, heard it from my grandpa, heard it from my mom, heard it from a number of people and friends. I was just known as the guy who would just turn up, you know. And she, you know, she'd mentioned it a couple times, and she's like, look, I'm never going to tell you what to do or how you should live your life, but it's something that I observe, and I want you to be happy and healthy, and I want to live a long life with you, and I think it's something that, you know, you should be aware of. And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm in control. You know, I can stop when I want. I don't feel the need to stop because I don't think
This was your reply, or was this an internal monologue?
No, this is like, that was more of an internal monologue. Reply to her was like, yes, I hear you. You know, I'll work towards it. And this is kind of where I started like trying to control my drinking, where I'm like, all right, I'll have like 2 or whatever. And so I went through a little bit of a phase with that, and I, you know, ended up at a family member's wedding, and, you know, I was giving a speech, so the nerves were setting in, and I'm like, I'll just have, you know, a couple whiskeys on ice just to settle the nerves, and then I'll stop. Well, I went from a couple whiskeys on ice to waking up in an ambulance. And I'm being manhandled, you know, fucking arms are up, and they're checking me, they're pulling shit out of my pockets, I'm hooked up to a fucking machine. They're chattering in their lingo. I'm like, what is happening? And I look up, and the doors are closing, and she's just standing there, terrified, tears, right? And I'm like, what happened? And so they're taking me, and I'm conscious, like, for the ride, and I'm hearing them talking, and they're like, you know, you took something, you overdosed, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I get to the hospital, and I'm like in this bed, and then she shows up, and she's, you know, I don't even know how she got there, and she's sitting next to me, and the nurse comes in. She's like, what did you take tonight? I'm like, So I had found someone's pack of cigarettes, and I had opened it with the intent to have a cigarette, because I used to be like a chain smoker. Have a cigarette, find a little baggie. It's like a little 2-gram bag. I'm like, we're about to have a little fun.
What's it smell like?
Because now I got a little booze brain after a couple of whiskeys, and I'm not thinking right. And so I'm like, I found this, it's all mine, I don't have to share, I'm gonna go have a little fun. Went in the bathroom, hit a couple of those, and so this nurse comes in, she's asking me, I'm like, I have no idea. She's trying to get me to admit it. Finally, she just hits the point, she's like, you overdosed on fentanyl. Just so you know. And she's like, and you popped for cocaine. I'm like, okay. And, you know, I was given cocaine earlier in the night, and ironically, the only reason the fentanyl didn't kill me is because I had the faintest heartbeat left. So I stopped breathing, everything shut down. Lips, face, blue, fucking.
Yeah.
And someone at the wedding had Narcan in their truck. And so when they realized what happened and they came running in, gave them the Narcan, saved my life.
So they had Narcan.
They had
Oh,
Narcan
wow.
in their truck. Because I would have been, because the amount I took, dude, I thought I was doing like, and not that it's any better.
Yeah.
It's all fucking horrible. But I thought I was doing something completely different. And because I knew that stuff was present, you know what I mean? And so I ended up doing fentanyl, and it almost kills me. And the only reason, the irony of the situation, the only reason I stayed alive is because the cocaine kept that faintest heartbeat going. And so that's a thing to think about, like, you know, good Lord. And so, boom, another rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Then I come home, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna get sober. So then I had actually kept the literature that I was given from going to AA years ago. So then I go and if that's not a sign, right?
What do you think? A subconscious?
Yeah, totally. Because like I kept both of
Just gonna
them.
leave this over here for someone else, not me.
Yeah, it was like in the closet, stored away, right?
Yeah.
It's like I got the 12 steps and I got the big book. You know what I mean?
Filed in when you're ready.
Yeah, exactly. And so I start kind of going through the step, and I'm like reading through I read through the 12 steps, right? And I'm like, and by the way, like this isn't a way to, you know, promote the program or anything like that. Like it's whatever people want to do that helps them is for them. I found a program that works for me, and ended up, you know, finding that book. So I read through it, and I read, you know, a step a day. And then in my head somehow I was like, okay, I've worked the steps, good, you know. So then I put together like 90 days, right? And to celebrate those 90 days, I went out and drank.
Whoa.
You know, and so because I thought like I've got the confidence now, you know, like I'm rebuilding that confidence that I can control it, because I just went 90 days without it, right? So that means I should be able to moderate. I've learned my lesson. That goes into another, you know, 6 months of just nightmarish hell of trying to control it. And then I would piece together another 100 days or something like that. And then I would, you know, get to the point where, you know, some people had to, and I guess I won't get into, you know, who they are for these people's privacy. But I started kind of like stealing booze. I couldn't control just all of it. Like any moderation was just gone. Like I could not control any amount of drinking at all, and would go on like 4 or 5 day benders, just drinking all day every day, and I just don't remember anything from those days.
Oh.
And it got to the point where someone sat me down, someone very important in my life, had an intervention with me, and they said, look, you know, like we're worried about you. And I already knew why they were worried, and I just hadn't accepted it yet. And so, you know, I told this person, you know, I'm an alcoholic. It was the first time I ever said it out loud to someone else. And it was so hard to say, because I was so scared that person was going to think I was like a leper, or like a, you know, just outcast of society. I thought my life was over if I said those words. And he didn't say anything. He walked over to me and he hugged me. And it's just not what I expected, was that kind of grace, you know. And so that it remotivated me to continue piecing together days on my own, right? So then I went like 100 days, and I ended up going to a film festival, and I was in an environment, there's people drinking, and it was in Florida, and the party's on, you know. And so I did good for like a day and a half, right? And then I didn't have the willpower, and I ended up having a drink just to kind of chill the nerves, and I'm like, it's cool, like I'll be all right. And
at this stage, was this in company that knew the dynamic already, or you were
and
solo?
like I was like telling people like, look, help me. I'm not drinking anymore, you know? And so what that did was that addictive voice starts to justify shitty behavior. And that shitty behavior meaning like fucking, hiding things or lying or like, hey, I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick. Go to the bar. And like in St. Petersburg, all the bars are like next to each other, and that's where I was. So, and I used to work down there, so like I knew people working, and so I would like steal into a place, and I was living in Atlanta at the time, so I'd go into a place and recognize the bartender, and they're like, "What's up?" I'm like, "Hey, how you doing, man? Let's have a drink." Whatever. And they would just like give me a shot, I'd hit it real quick, and then I'd leave. And it was just another relapse. With the same fucking outcome, same problems, and this time, without going into detail, I severely fucked up to where it was. I think it's even worse than me, accidental overdose. Like it's worse than that.
Okay.
Because it involved other people.
Yeah.
And
we'll spare those details.
yeah, and so I came home from that and just had to talk it out and just be at peace with everything. And that was like that was when I had like a mental switch. It was like I almost, it's so weird. Like I didn't me dying wasn't enough.
Yeah.
But hurting someone I loved, that was like where I drew the line, right? And that kind of gives you an idea of like the value I held for myself, And so I just absolutely destroyed somebody, and seeing the look on their face and hearing the tremble in their voice, I decided I'm going to an AA meeting first thing in the morning. And I kept that promise to myself. I found one that was close enough to walk to. And that was the last time I drank. And I've been going to meetings since. And I've
Gives me chills, man.
Yeah. It's a really hard thing, man, like on both ends. But you got to choose your heart. It was a very clear choice that I was making to stay in that suffering. And I was making other people suffer. I was a liability to everyone in my life. I was a liability to myself. It was clear that, I didn't care about myself enough to make a change, so I think everyone's going to have their own personal journey, and they got to figure out what it is that really clicks with them. I happen to be, very, very empathetic, and the promises that I make to other people were more important to me than the promises I would make to myself, because that's just kind of how I was built, with just abandonment trauma and like wanting to be liked and loved and yearning for that. I'm a people pleaser. I'm an overworker. I do all of these things, or I was doing. It's still so fresh. I was doing all those things out of a desire to win people's love and attention. And then once I realized that, and I was able to work the program, and the program asks you to take an inventory and kind of figure these things out. Like you got to sit down and actually, it's like you got homework. You know what I mean? Like, what are the things that I fear, and like what's driving this decision? Why do I feel this way? What's making me feel this way? And once you kind of shine a light on those things, then you start to realize, like it starts to become apparent. You're like, oh, that thing that happened to me when I was a kid really defined who I was going to become essentially for the rest of my life. And if I didn't get in front of that fucking, train, I guess, and change the track, it was going down a really bad road.
Yeah.
And I was aware of that, but it's just, they say that like every alcoholic like needs to hit rock bottom, if not multiple times, because it's hard to say some of these things definitively, but for me, like, I hadn't suffered enough until I finally did to lose the judgment of asking for help, to just get beaten into the ground so thoroughly and so brutally that I stopped fucking judging the thing that was supposed to help me. Stop holding on to this confidence of like being a fucking man. Because for some reason in my head, admitting that I needed help wasn't manly. It wasn't, it wasn't something that I could admit to because it just, and I'll just be very direct because it was always the shit that I kind of heard, but it was like admitting that I needed help, that meant I was a fucking pussy. Don't be a fucking pussy. I'm always hearing that shit in my head, And so it was like I had this battle with masculinity, and masculinity was preventing me from healing. It was preventing me from confronting these things.
And to hear that, like the battle with the masculinity, it is like the unhealthy masculinity.
Yes.
It's the desire for self-preservation and pride.
Yeah.
That you don't want to show your true colors because then that's when you're perceived as weak, and you want to be seen as strong. And so it's the true masculine nature that you can realize that you are, as you are, all you need to be.
Yeah.
That is the true essence of masculinity. When you can find the ability to ask for help, it's like the lone wolf. What happens to the lone wolf? He fucking dies. It's the one surrounded by support and a pack that survives.
Yeah. And so let me reframe that, because I'm really glad that you took that opportunity to expand on that. Masculinity in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's not. It's a wonderfully fucking beautiful thing when it's used and kind of operated within the right way. It's when it's more of like the toxicity of any fucking gender, not just masculine, whatever. It's toxic behaviors across the board that kind of imprison us in these kind of thought systems that may not be the most healthy for us.
Yeah.
For me in particular, as an individual, the more toxic nature of going out and drinking booze and smoking cigarettes and driving fast and chasing women.
You don't find less confidence when you're drinking.
Exactly. And so I don't know. I thought I was living this life that I thought meant I was, this kind of strong, capable person. And I was really like just a cartoon character. You know what I mean? Like
it's so fortunate that I met you when I did, hearing your story, because we probably wouldn't have gotten along. I mean, no. I probably would have enjoyed your company, but I probably wouldn't have hung out with you, because I'm like, so to hear all those things, and it's just so clear to me as you download your experience, and equally as I know you now as an individual, so much of who we are, the success we find, the opportunities we manifest in so many ways, is when we let go of the desire, the need for control. And it's that like really unhealthy fixation on control that warps our realities and turns us into these individuals, these cartoon characters that we are not.
Yeah.
And so to hear that story and just see now where you are at this grounded state of experience, it's refreshing, and it's validating, because it's confirmation, the equally me on my journey, that by gravitating towards individuals not like you, not because I desire and need that for me, it's because I see me in you. It's that unhealthy boundary that I'm like, I need that for me so I can feel that I have it for me. It's more that like, as a mirror. And so it's really, I'm grateful for our relationship, and then equally the lessons that you've lived that I can then learn from. Kudos to you.
Thanks, dude. I enjoy being in the presence of guys like you too, because there's a frequency that we have tapped into.
6,900 megahertz.
Hey, I'm going to agree, but I don't know.
A lame joke. 69.
So, but that frequency gets stronger. You know what I mean? Us just being here sharing and it's on the path that I am very fortunate and grateful to be on now. And it takes work. I said it earlier, man, like choose your hard. Like it's not easy getting up early. It's not easy getting to the gym every single day. It's not easy to run miles and miles.
I've seen those
every day.
abs looking good.
But hey, thanks, bud. Thanks.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep those promises to yourself, especially when you have a brain like mine. And the only reason I don't take hours is because I don't want to diagnose you with anything that,
What are you talking about? I'm perfect.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
Well, I wanted to speak to when you say do the work. I had a friend, a dear friend, that commented on something I shared at some stage. Like, I always see people talking about doing the work. Like, what is the work? And to hear and to read it, I could hear it in their voice that I was like, the frustration, because when you're saying doing the work, it's not like it's a handbook or homework or whatever. It's the idea that you gotta not sniff your own farts and realize, with that level of self-awareness, like what needs to change and show up for it daily. Speak to that just as far as like what it means to do the work, like for someone that may not get.
Yeah, I think for me, to do the work, the very first thing you need is a desire for change. And that desire has to come from something that you're doing that you're just not satisfied with, that you're not comfortable with anymore, a change that you want to make, right? That's where you start. You let that lead you start doing your research, and you find something that speaks to your fucking soul, like to your heart. You know what I mean? Some people find that in religion. Some people find it in fitness. Some people find it, in a 12-step program. I just read The Artist's Way. That's like a 12-week thing, right? To get back in touch with your creative spirit, right? So there's things out there that I credit with doing the work is finding a way of life, principles from Bibles or whatever it might be that resonates with you, and then you start taking the tools from that program and you start infusing them with your life. Because what I've done, I can't sit here and like quote the 12 steps. I probably can't even name all of them off like in a row. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm like religious about this thing.
Yeah.
But in reading it and in reflecting on it and journaling about it, consuming this information, it then starts to influence my behavior. And now I'm taking a second to sit and relax and think about how I want to conduct myself rather than just reacting to the world around me. That in essence, I believe, is doing the work. If you can develop that self-awareness, and for me, it's called, like a addictive voice recognition technique. I refer to it as like the beast.
Okay.
The beast is that voice that tells me I can have one drink. Oh, dude, you just accomplished this awesome thing. You can have one beer. That's the beast. And so to counteract that, in my journal, I constantly reaffirm that my goal now, moving forward in life, is to be the good beast. Because that one that I hear that's the bad beast. And so if I am the good beast, then I'm making the decision that beast doesn't want me to. If it's telling me to go to the bar, I'm going to go to run. That's doing the work, developing the awareness.
Yeah, I think when I read her reply, and then equally when I reached out to her, it was a similar expression with just the idea of like, whatever your situation, if it's not ideal, like people are so adverse to change, even when the thing they're changing from is terrible, because like you say, it's like until you're ready for that change, it's not going to be for you. But
yeah, you have to want it bad enough.
You gotta want it
to not
and
not
then show
judge
up
it and
daily
overthink it.
show up daily to ask yourself like, nope, still want it, and then be ready for that constant conversation. And equally, the work is never done. It's not something you're like,
No.
you finish and you're like, all right, now I'm better.
So
It's
with me in my realm, I used to think like, oh yeah, I work these steps or I do the work or whatever, and then I'm good, I'm recovered. That's not the case. You know what I mean? Like, I will always It's my makeup to be an addict. I have an addict's brain and and chemical, there's a chemistry to it for me, at least that's what I believe. And I will always be in recovery. And once I got cool with that, and I realized, okay, this is a lifestyle switch. This is just what I need to do now. For me, I look at it as I mean, some people get like a terminal disease or something like that, and that shit fucking sucks. And those people have to switch up their life to deal with that now. Like my father has rheumatoid arthritis. Like his lifestyle has changed. He has to do things a certain way now, because it's just a part of who he is. And there's not, that I'm aware of, there's not a cure. They're still like testing shit for that. So I have to think about it in the same way that there is a cure for what I have. I just have to find it every day, and it takes different tools. So I gotta find a new weapon, and I have to go to war every day with this thing, and that war gets a little bit easier when you've got the right tools on your belt, Yeah, I think it's holding on to that either the past life or holding on to the idea that you don't have this thing that keeps you sick. Big part of how I live my life now is surrender and control.
Yeah.
Surrendering to a higher power as I understand him, and how whoever wants to understand whatever that is, just acknowledging that there's higher power at play here. It's not me. That opened my fucking world wide open, dude. Wide open.
I think eliminating that expectation, that desire for things to be this way or that way, getting out of that need, really lets you flourish, because then you're just so accepting, and that surrender is what, in my equal perspective, it's just like what the universe is like. When you're ready, we're here. If you show up for yourself, we'll show up for you.
Yeah.
Get out of the fucking way. Yeah. It's already here. It's not thinking that you got to twist the right knob to do the right thing. If you could just chill the fuck out, accept things as they are, be the best for that, then that's usually the necessary thing. It's funny though, because we think we got to figure it out sometimes.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And still, that's why it's like a daily thing. That's what doing the work is every day.
Well, that's why guys like you are so valuable in my camp, and you, as an individual, need to be seeking out individuals that, like, you never want to be the smartest in the room. You never want to be the best at whatever, because then you're done growing. And if you're done growing, then you're dying.
Yeah.
And so finding the individuals that can make you, iron sharpens iron. So if that's what we're about, and that's why I'm so grateful for Meg. She's like, I say it all the time, like, she won't let me sniff my own farts. It's crude, but it's to say that, like, she's not letting anything slip by. She goes, "What's this? What are you doing?" And I'm like, nothing. And so finding friends that can keep you in check is so valuable. Yeah. And a lot of people, whether they don't have access to those individuals, are too insecure to seek those individuals out, or too desperate for the validation or the people pleasing that they think they can't find or challenge others in that world to find that for themselves. It's interesting, but
yeah. I think that's a sign of like a really good, true, genuine friend, if you can pull someone aside and do like a check. You know what I mean? Like how are you? Like,
yeah.
How are things going? I'm noticing a little bit of this. Like,
is that why you're talking shit about my setup when you came in here?
What?
No, absolutely. A fortunate experience I just had, where I'm quick to be there for someone in so many ways, and not being specific, but I just had an individual go through a big relationship that, I had at some point had to take a break from it, because I was like, until you're ready to show up for yourself, I can't do anything more for you.
Yeah.
And unless you want me to hate your guts, I'll be on the backside.
Yeah.
And sure enough, after time and enough sucked, they woke up and realized equally, like, oh, I gotta choose me for a moment, and to loop back around and reconnect at the time it was ugly in such a way, it could be perceived as ugly, that it was like, you know, you're being a dick. I'm like, no, I'm choosing to love you. It was nice, a validating experience to have after the fact, them come to me and be like, that's what I wanted. And it was devastating when it was severed.
Yeah.
When that connection was severed, and I knew it wasn't because you were being a dick, it was because I was fucking up.
Yeah.
Which is nice. That's not why I'm into it, but it was just, one of those things that along the way you can find as an affirmation in the experience. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we don't speak up on some things, we're enabling them. You know.
when I'm curious, like I'm not so familiar with the steps. I could probably spitball them, but with the idea of enabling, like a deeper level, that sometimes people don't realize that when they think they're protecting someone from something,
Yeah.
they're ultimately taking the opportunity for growth from that individual.
Yeah.
Realistically, it's because they are so insecure that they're going to offend that person and they're going to be upset at them. And so it's actually a selfish choice. And so with that kind of framing, with the steps, is that I didn't know if that was something that they speak to. It's like, oh, you like specific to enabling and things like that. Like, you're just being selfish, actually. If I give him booze, it's ultimately because you don't want to hear him, whether it's sober up or want
The booze, like you're just doing it for you. I didn't know if there was any tools in that bag of things to I don't know if it would be for enabler. What was it? What's the one? I was watching The Bear. You watched The Bear? Yes, yeah.
Have I watched The Bear?
Yeah. Holy shit! What a good show. Man, is it just like gives me anxiety through the roof, but so fun. He attends these which, as an aside, this individual that is so terrible with conflict resolution, nobody can have a sensible conversation in their fucking kitchen. It's just a shit show. Can show up to therapy and just be the most eloquent and open individual ever. It's like, all right, find a little consistency there, but whatever.
Yeah.
What are those meetings called that he goes to?
I think he's in
Al-Anon,
Al-Anon.
and that's for individuals with an individual. That's
Yeah, so that's like spouses and like children of alcoholics, and
what in your world
I believe.
is that associated? Is that connected, or is that a totally separate?
Yeah. So from what I understand, they work a similar program, if not, almost the same program.
Okay.
It's I think it's just geared towards their position in that relationship dynamic.
But it's still, I guess, rooted in the idea that like you're not going to want change for someone else until they want it for themselves. Like you show up for you, and that's the change that they would need themselves.
That sounds kind of accurate. I've yet to be to an Al-Anon, so
Yeah.
I'm not really educated on the,
I'll do my next podcast at an Al-Anon meeting.
Yeah. I mean, I think any kind of group setting where people can air out what they've got going on and they can safely explore that and then hear from other people. Like, dude, I first started going to meetings and I just started like pouring my heart out. This one thing would like make me want to cry. I'd be sitting here just dumping it, right? And then I would just see this around the room. And like that, just that little motion, people's head bobbing. I felt so heard and understood. I'd never felt so heard and understood in my entire fucking life.
Well, I guess what you're saying right now is exactly what I missed in the show. My frustration with him being so terrible at communication skills in his own world, but so open in that group setting is exactly what you're describing and why I fucking missed the point.
Well,
that is where he's not feeling judged. He's feeling received.
He's safe. He's safe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and as much as we want to say that we feel safe around our peers and the people in our life, we're not. I mean, that is the trick of, the anonymous bit, is that we can go and sit in the circle and it's like no one fucking knows each other, so we can go in there and feel like we can actually dig this stuff out. And ultimately, I'm never going to see you again unless it's here. So like, I don't really care if you judge me, kind of thing, so you can just really let the stuff out that you wouldn't otherwise, because I'm not going to sit in a room with my friends. It's selective. I don't think I'm going to pour out anything and everything that I would in a meeting like this where it's anonymous and a bunch of strangers, but it still needs to be said because I need to work it out.
Well, I'm curious then, your perspective on the idea that, because I hear you and I understand, um, where I beg to differ is that the the if so comfortable and safe in that meeting, the reality being the more that you can be that open in the world is the fastest way you can eliminate individuals in your life that actually aren't there for you. They're not serving you, and ultimately that honesty and ability to be walls down gets you to that place of safety in the world
Yeah.
that, like,
And you only get there by making that choice.
correct.
And it's essentially the reason why I'm here with you today.
Yeah.
And this is the first time that I've spoke openly about this kind of stuff uh, in this format, certainly.
Well, right now it's me listening and my mom. So
And your mom.
my biggest fan.
Yeah.
I don't know if you even listen to all of them, but
Yeah. But I mean, it can be scary to talk about things,
absolutely.
you know? And so sometimes it's easier to go to a meeting where it's anonymous just to get that stuff out and get comfortable with, to build that muscle of sharing and kind of getting the stuff out of you.
Well, and
Doing
absolutely,
this.
absolutely.
Doing this. Sorry.
The life you've lived to now, I imagine, is so obviously you reflect on it with the clear eye now, but like some of it informs your stories you write, the characters you play.
Dude, it's
Yeah.
a massive influence on
Yeah.
a contract right now. Like it wasn't brought to me with the intent for that experience. And it just started kind of making its way into it because it's all very strong and it's such a big presence in my life. And the people that I'm working with are happy with it. So it's, yeah, you know, now I'm starting to understand why they say like write what you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, and speaking of that experience is so invaluable. One thing that I think about my time growing up into my time in Los Angeles and then the business I'm in and how I operate, there was a period where when I had first got to LA that I was so um, I had such desire for to be this artist in such a way that like I convinced myself that my life is so easy. I live a life of ease, which is true to a degree, and I still, I create the world I live in. But at the time, I was like, I haven't lived, man. I haven't seen things, and like, if I'm supposed to be playing these characters or be this actor, like, I wish I had more experiences as such.
Yeah.
Fast forward a decade, I'm like, I wish I shut my fucking mouth because having lived all those experiences and more, and equally identifying that every child, every individual lives a life. It may not be as clear as like, oh yeah, I was a crack addicted baby. We all have our different demons along the way, but nobody's not affected. But it was just curious because it was just such a desire I had that I was like, man, I wish I had lived this life of or this life of hardship, that I could be this informed actor, that I had these things to draw on. Where now I'm like, man, I wish that on no one. Like being content and it's just equally, it's not something I was ready to learn at that stage or age either, but it's just one of those funny hindsight as such things where I'm like, okay, shut your freaking mouth, dude.
Yeah, I think there's I don't know. Feel free to reroute this if we go down the wrong path. But I think there is a desire out there for it's almost like this.
Oh, sorry to
No, to your thing. This one's still good.
this one's powered. This one's powered.
Sit on top of it.
Not even so bad. The camera and they can step the line, which is the same. The issue was that I'm close to this camera. So if I'm not up there, I'll shoot you right on the head.
Yeah, this is exactly how it's supposed to be, and honestly, it's where I desire the podcast to go in general.
Yeah.
I love learning about people, and I do have a lot of really fascinating friends that do really cool shit at a really high level, but it's my desire that when I have these conversations that we can touch on that, talk about it, but I want to learn about the person underneath that stuff that got them there or how they're wired. I think that's far more interesting than like, setting records or whatever. And so these are the conversations that I want.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you've done the work as such that you're ready for that conversation. But it's my intent that I can show up for people in a way that they feel comfortable to have those deeper conversations with me. We'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, I think I was on, there's this weird thing right now that it's an observation. I don't know if it's like a thing. You tell me if you've seen it too, but it's almost as if there's some sort of value attached to being oppressed. It feels like there's people, the fucking internet, man.
We're going to get in trouble on this.
There's this yearning to be like the most oppressed person, and it's kind of, it's crazy to witness because, like you said, like I don't fucking wish that shit on anybody. You know what I mean? But it's like everyone kind of wants some sort of like pity or.
I think it's just equally like the victim mentality is addictive.
Yeah.
And this could make us sound like grandpa's on our lawn. Oh, get out of here. That it's like the kids today just want to be seen, and so identifying a piece in that victimhood of like, I have this is my diagnosis, like I'm ADHD, I'm autistic, I'm whatever. It's because they can't stand on their own 2 feet yet, that they're finding these things that define them, that they, I would be so much more if not for all these underlying things.
Right.
And so I don't know if that's new per se. I bet every generation has, like, that's what it sounds like when they're like kids are coming up. They're like, all you do is bitch. You have it so easy compared to how I had it. Right. And that's the conversation as it always goes. Yeah. I mean, the internet certainly puts a magnifying glass on all of it and like really ramps it up and makes it a lot more audible. Mm-hmm. I try to tune out, like I don't watch the news anymore. Like if we're watching TV, it's to see an episode of XYZ or whatever the movie was. Right. We're not seeing that, like whatever. But I see that too for sure. But I don't know if it's an effect or a cause or new or old or. Yeah.
Well, so we can agree that it exists, and I don't know that we need to get too deep into that because I certainly am I have no intent to offend anybody or devalue anyone's situation or whatever it is that they're dealing with in their lives. Like I don't know, I'm very empathetic in the sense that I feel very strongly for what's that?
It could be that like we have just so many plastic products now that all these kids are fucked.
What do you mean?
Like, like all the paraffins and like, microwaving in plastics and like all of our water bottles that like, maybe they're all right. Maybe they are.
Yeah, maybe it's all like compounding and just.
Maybe we were the last best,
Right.
I kid.
We're joking.
I kid.
Yeah. I don't know. The internet's a scary place, man. I try not to participate too much. Cause I mean, dude, it's such a, if for anything, for the massive time suck it becomes, like it's when I put my phone down and I focus on doing things, like my productivity is insane. Mm-hmm. The minute, like I have to remove Instagram from my phone because I will just I'll be waiting for something and just boom. It's like I'm on fucking autopilot, pulling that thing up and then I just start scrolling and then like 10, 15 minutes later, I'm like, what am I doing? Get rid of it. So it's a thing. I delete Instagram and then I'll uninstall it and then reinstall it like 2 or 3 times in a day sometimes because then I realize I have to contact someone who's only through there or whatever. It's just so ingrained in our lives.
It is a weird, because I do the same dance as well, like equally with social media and then specifically TikTok. Yeah. Like that's crack to me where I'm not a consumer.
Yeah.
I'm a creator. And so it's more fun for me to think of an idea for a video or come up with this thing. It's frustrating when the algorithm doesn't support any such, creation anymore. It's just looking for like, this new way you're supposed to be on social media. But TikTok. I don't know how that program's set up, but man, does it hook me.
Yeah.
If I just don't like fall into a hole for 45 minutes where I've not, what have I even watched?
Right.
But that is there. So I frequently, but then you're like, well, I got to share this because it's part of my brand. If I'm not putting out and using the tools available, and so then you beat yourself up that way. And but that's akin to all the other things that we do. In moderation is the thing, and I think actively deleting it if that's the little stop loss along the way. Fortunately, Instagram and TikTok and all these tools aren't as debilitating as alcohol.
Right.
But it's no different,
Yeah.
and so
It's still, I mean, I think it's still activating the same like receptors in our
it's all
brain. And
dopamine hits, and
it's giving us a shot of something that it's giving us the pleasure, it's tapping into that pleasure, and that's kind of what we're seeking because that's giving us that little bit of escape. And that's the interesting thing too about like addiction and like I'm an alcoholic, but it's like it's almost like addict is the more defined thing because it's with like anything. It can be with social media, it can be like bubbly water, I have one and then as soon as that one's gone I want another one. It's like sweets and just about anything. I think on the way here I was thinking about like the things that I eat, like the type of candy. Like I just burned through like a whole pack of Reese's Puffs in like 3 days, and it's because like once I have one, I pop and I can't stop.
If I'm, I stay. I like to think I stay pretty consistent and healthy, like in any number of things. But the less I drink, if I'm drinking, beers here, there, anywhere, I'm more of a salty guy. If I'm like, oh no, I gotta, drop a couple, or I want to tighten up for whatever reason, my sweets kick in, and I'm like, we should have ice cream. We didn't have any beers. We could have ice cream. It's like a weird, my chemicals shift that way.
Yeah.
That like, I could run through a bag of fucking Sour Patch Kids.
Yeah, dude, I yearn for sugar like crazy after like a hardcore sweat. Go on a long run.
Do you think
I get
that's
home,
the
I'm
biggest?
just like looking for like like scanning like a fucking robot. What has sugar?
Do you think in all things that you could be addicted to, that's one of the biggest? I mean, it's arguably one of the biggest killers. Heart disease and all things in and around diabetes. That since it's not alcohol and we're not like punching somebody in the face after a bag of Sour Patch Kids, that's actually the most addictive substance out there.
Like a silent
People
killer.
don't realize how dangerous it actually is.
Dude, coffee, caffeine.
Yeah.
I'm like kind of that's like my next battle. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to wean myself off of.
I say
coffee.
this after like 2 cups of coffee and a C4.
Holy moly!
Yeah, I went to the gym. I was doing something, I think.
Yeah.
I was having a heart attack.
I mean, it's a very similar battle, man. Like I get halfway done with a cup of coffee and I start thinking about the one I'm gonna have after it, and that's addictive voice, right? I'm like, I gotta shut that shit down.
My go-to justification, and it's totally the unhealthy way of operating, is like comparison, which is the thief of joy. When you can compare, like, well, so and so had 22 beers. Like you think of like Ozzy Osbourne. How is that guy still alive?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm not that bad.
You did all the drugs.
Yeah, and that's the same for caffeine, or like there's always somebody that's like way more off the rocker than you, and you're like, eh. But that's just obviously a funny,
you can do, I
silly.
can do better. No.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking for a long time, and I feel like we could talk about 1,000 more things, and I plan to. Yeah. But as far as episode 15,
Yeah, man.
you did it.
Yeah. Stay off social media, kids. If you took anything from that,
The whole
stay off
show,
social
that
media.
was it. I'm super grateful you were able to come out. I want to have you sign the table.
Yeah, man.
But before you sign the table, this is your opportunity to plug any of those socials and/or projects you have coming up that you want to bring attention to. Yeah. And you can, assuming this is still recording, deliver it right
Red
there.
light. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, first and foremost. If you made it all the way to this point in the video, congratulations on listening to me ramble like a madman and share some stuff for the first time that I'm learning to get comfortable with. So thank you for give me that platform. You can find me on Instagram. That's kind of the only one that I use, _ Sean Gloria, Sean spelled SEAN. That is the only proper way.
The correct way.
Spell it. I think tomorrow, I'm not sure when this is going to release, but if you go to Airy Productions on YouTube, that's AERI, that is a group of Florida peeps, actually, that I've been working with, and we're pumping out some content, some short form stuff on YouTube, Instagram, in works towards making feature films. You know, that's always the goal. So you can spot me on the first season of BMF. That's on Stars Network. It's produced by 50 Cent, Tasha Smith. And I played Detective Lopez in that. You can spot me on FBI as Ricky Marino. And yeah, keep an eye out. I'm just auditioning and hoping that someone hires me someday. Again and again.
Yeah, we didn't even touch on any of your film accolades already, but seasoned pro.
I mean, we can always come back and do it again.
Well, I mean, it's inevitable you'll be back on the pod. All right, here's your.
Do it. Is this
Marker,
still does this
still
process get rolled on?
Yeah, this is kind of like the credits.
Where's the, do you
Pick
care?
your poison size, position, wherever. There's a bunch under there. If you wanted to be that guy, Mr. Man of Excess.
I'm not gonna be that guy. My days of excess are over, my friend.
Hey. Oh, good choice. That's a good choice. And usually, at this stage, I cut all the cameras and then I move on and cut it together at whatever stage and blah.